The rain had been coming down in sheets since late afternoon, turning the streets into silver rivers and blurring the city lights into long, trembling lines. Most people hurried past the little corner cafe without even glancing inside. It wasn't a place that promised warmth or comfort, just cheap coffee, fading menus, and a tired-looking waiter who worked double shifts to make ends meet. That waiter was Daniel Hart. At 34, Daniel looked older than he was. Long nights, early mornings, and the quiet weight of responsibility had carved lines into his face. His world revolved around one person, his 8-year-old daughter, Lily. Since his wife had passed away 3 years earlier, Daniel had learned to be both mother and father, comforter and provider. Waiting tables wasn't his dream, but it paid the rent, covered school supplies, and kept food on the table. That was enough, for now. That evening, business was slow. The rain kept customers away, and Daniel spent most of his time wiping the counter and glancing at the door, hoping the storm would ease before his shift ended. Lily was at home with Mrs. Alvarez, their elderly neighbor, who watched her whenever Daniel worked late. Daniel hated leaving his daughter behind, especially on nights like this, but there was no choice. Then the door flew open. A young woman stumbled inside, drenched from head to toe. Her hair clung to her face, her coat hung heavy with water, and her breath came in sharp, uneven gasps. For a moment, she just stood there, as if unsure whether she was safe. Daniel was at her side instantly. Hey, you're okay, he said gently, grabbing a clean towel from behind the counter. Sit down, please. She hesitated, eyes darting toward the window, where the rain hammered against the glass. Then her knees seemed to give out, and she collapsed into the nearest chair. Daniel wrapped the towel around her shoulders. What happened? Are you hurt? She shook her head, or maybe she was shivering too hard to answer properly. I think someone was following me, she whispered. I ran. I didn't know where else to go. Daniel's jaw tightened. He glanced outside, scanning the street. There was no one lingering nearby, just rain, headlights, and shadows. Still, he didn't like the fear in her eyes. It was the kind of fear that came from real danger, not imagination. You're safe here, he said firmly. I'm not letting anyone hurt you. He poured her a cup of hot tea, his hands steady despite the unease crawling up his spine. Years ago, before life had narrowed his world, Daniel might have doubted himself. Now, with Lily depending on him, something inside him had hardened into quiet resolve. The woman wrapped her hands around the cup, letting the steam warm her face. Slowly, her breathing began to slow. Thank you, she said after a moment. Most people just kept walking. Daniel gave a small shrug. Sometimes all it takes is one door that's still open. She managed a faint smile. My name's Emma. Daniel. They sat in silence for a while, broken only by the sound of rain and the hum of the old refrigerator behind the counter. When Emma finally stood, she looked steadier, though her eyes still carried a shadow. Can I walk you somewhere? Daniel asked. Or call someone for you? She shook her head. No, I think I'll be okay now. I just needed a place to breathe. Before leaving, she pressed something into his hand, a folded bill. Daniel pushed it back. No, really, please, she insisted softly. For the tea, and for everything. After a brief hesitation, he nodded. Take care of yourself, Emma. As the door closed behind her, Daniel didn't realize that the brief encounter would ripple through his life in ways he never could have imagined. Days later, Daniel was at home, sitting on the worn couch with Lily curled up beside him. The TV flickered softly in the dim living room as rain tapped against the window once more. Daddy, Lily said suddenly, sitting up straight. I know her. Daniel looked down at her. Know who, sweetheart? The lady on TV. On the screen was a news segment. A young woman stood at a podium, cameras flashing as reporters called out questions. Her hair was neatly styled now, her clothes elegant, her posture confident. But Daniel recognized her immediately. Emma. The headline at the bottom of the screen read, Tech Air breaks silence after stalking incident. Daniel stared, stunned. Lily pointed excitedly. That's the lady from the cafe, Daddy. The one you gave the towel to. The reporter explained how Emma Collins, daughter of a prominent technology entrepreneur, had narrowly escaped a dangerous situation days earlier. Security footage showed her running through rain-soaked streets before disappearing into a small cafe. The suspect had been arrested later that night. Daniel's heart pounded as he listened. He hadn't known who Emma was, only that she was scared and needed help. "She looks different," Lily said thoughtfully. "But it's her, I'm sure." Daniel swallowed. "Yeah, it is." The next morning, his phone buzzed while he was tying his apron at work. An unfamiliar number flashed on the screen. "Hello, Daniel Hart," a familiar voice asked. He froze. "Emma." "Yes," she said, and he could hear the smile in her voice. "I was hoping it was still the same number." Yeah, it is. Are you okay?" "I am. And I owe you more than a thank you," she said. "Can we talk?" That afternoon, during his break, Daniel sat across from Emma in the same cafe. This time, there were no towels, no rain-soaked clothes, just two people sharing a quiet moment. "I never told you who I was," Emma said. "I didn't want special treatment. That night, I just needed to be a person, not a headline." Daniel nodded. "You didn't need to tell me anything." She looked at him seriously. "What you did mattered. You didn't hesitate. You didn't ask questions. You helped." He shifted uncomfortably. "Anyone would have done the same." Emma shook her head. "Not everyone does." She took a breath. "I run a foundation. We support families who are one crisis away from falling apart. Single parents. Kids who deserve better chances." She paused. "I want to help you and Lily." Daniel's first instinct was to refuse. Pride flared, sharp and familiar. But then he thought of Lily's shoes with worn soles, of the nights he skipped meals so she wouldn't have to. "I don't want charity," he said quietly. Emma smiled gently. "Then don't call it that. Call it opportunity." Within weeks, things began to change. Daniel received a scholarship to complete the culinary program he had once abandoned. Lily was enrolled in a school with better resources, her laughter growing louder, her drawings brighter. Life didn't become perfect overnight. Daniel still worked hard. He still worried, but the weight on his chest felt lighter. One evening, months later, Daniel and Lily watched the rain together from their apartment window, this one brighter, warmer, safer. "Daddy," Lily said softly, "do you think the rain is bad?" Daniel thought for a moment. "No, I think sometimes it helps people find the right doors." Lily smiled, leaning against him. Somewhere in the city, the rain continued to fall. But because one single dad had chosen to stop, to open a door, and to care, 2 lives, and maybe many more, had been changed forever.